iTestify is about testifying of what Jesus Christ has done and can do in each of our lives. Through testimony of people just like you, and through study of His Word, our prayer is to encourage each follower of Christ to be a light in this world. So let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father, which is in heaven. Matthew 5:16.
Hi, welcome to another episode of I Testify. We have with us Pete Lingas from Precision and Movement, located locally here in Loma Linda, and he's going to be sharing with us his testimony. Pete, have you always been born and raised in the United States?
No, I actually was born in Bangkok, Thailand, and the upbringing was a pretty standard Adventist boy upbringing. Just mainly spent my time in the main capital city of Jakarta, Indonesia. So after I was born, I moved over to Indonesia. Mom, dad, brother, all of us just were together most of my childhood. And like I said, pretty standard. Went to church, and of course I was baptized around the age of 12. Again, pretty standard as most kids do. But at the time, you're a kid. You don't really, I don't believe, fully grasp the concept of the walk with Christ. But of course, at the time, I was very much into it. But after that, things kind of went back to its regular status quo of being a nominal person that I thought that I was. But yeah, that was kind of my upbringing so far.
Do you think the spiritual influences that you had in Indonesia were different than here in the United States? Did it pull you away, or did it keep the same, or draw you closer?
Yeah, I think growing up, definitely my parents were the spiritual pillars of the house. My dad we would have Vespers, and he would play guitar and we would sing songs, and my mom and dad would also just talk to us about spiritual topics, ranging from the more basic things like Sabbath and why we should read the Bible and all that good stuff. But again, as a child, I was just distracted, and I felt like I was just focused on a lot of video games and hanging out, and that was pretty much my childhood. And of course, trying to be a good son, getting good grades was very important. And I was focused on getting good grades, hanging out with my friends, and playing a lot of video games.
Excellent.
And as far as, just to answer your question, as far as the difference, as far as the spiritual walk and the influences, of course, as you get older, you then start to potentially question about, hey, if I'm a Christian, should I learn more about Christianity? And that, of course, takes maturity, takes other people to question your walk. And I'm definitely, grateful for the walk that's happened in the last few years. But early on, yeah, things I felt like were just the standard Adventist son type of scenario.
So how old were you when you came to the U.S.?
So
Why did you come?
Yeah, so I believe I was 11. It was 1998, and I don't know if many people know what happened in Indonesia at that time. There was a moment in history that included persecution to the Christian people in Indonesia, actually. And I just remember, I was just 10 or 11, and we were driving back from school, and the roads were blocked off, and it was very confusing to me. I was just like, I was trying to go home. I just want to do my own thing, go play my video game probably at the time. And my brother and I were in the car, and we had our driver driving us back home. And like I said, the roads were blocked, so we couldn't really get to the house. And I remember my mom calling us saying, hey, I won't be able to go home tonight because the roads are all blocked off and there's rioters in front of the house, or the roads that are leading to the house. So we were like, okay, that's kind of weird. Then my dad says the same thing. From what I remember, he couldn't be home at the time, or maybe he was out of town at the time on a business trip. So eventually my brother and I got home, and thankfully we had a gated door. So we rushed in, went to the house, and it might have been a traumatic memory. I don't remember much from there. I do remember our neighbor coming over, checking up on us and saying, "Hey, you guys okay?" And I think my brother Paul was the one that was mainly communicating because I was just a younger brother, and just freaking out probably. So all I remember was I just went under my bed. Paul and I went under the bed, and I believe we just spent the whole night under the bed and just praying. And
So you were home alone?
just Paul and I think, were home from what I remember. Yeah.
Was that the first time that you were home alone?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we had in Indonesia's different scenario, but we had maids there. So I don't remember, to be honest. If it felt like it was just Paul and I.
Without your parents?
Without the parents,
Yeah.
yes. They
First time without
I'm
the parents.
pretty sure they were not there. Yeah. But yeah, so from that experience, the next morning, it felt like my mom rushed back, told us to pack everything, put everything in one suitcase, and we just left for the airport and came to the U.S.
Did you ever find out what was going on, or it was much later that you found out?
I believe it was much later. Because I was a child, I was like, all right, just, if you were told to go somewhere, just go. So I just packed up all my clothes and left all my video games, and I'm just kidding. And just clothes on my back, and we just came to the U.S. Well, actually, we made a stop at Thailand, but eventually we made ourselves to Loma Linda here, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Because your parents were Adventists, so they had a familiarity with the U.S. You said that your dad had gone to school. I think you mentioned that we were talking privately,
Yep.
but your dad had gone to school, and your mom in Andrews,
Right.
in Michigan.
Andrews University. So they were familiar with the U.S. culture. They had spent some time here in the U.S., more in the Michigan area. I don't believe they had many trips to Loma Linda per se, but my mom's brother, my uncle, was a radiologist here at Loma Linda. So, and he had a house here in Colton, and he graciously offered to house us. So we came over to Loma Linda, and I remember coming over to the U.S. I'd have many trips here to Disneyland and all the touristy stuff, but I'd never lived here. So that was a big culture shock to live in the U.S.
Yeah, I bet.
coming from from Indonesia to the U.S., where everything was so much bigger and wider, and
You don't get your own driver?
I didn't get my own driver. I had to do my own laundry. What is this? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so things were very much different, but at the time I was, of course, questioning like, wow, what just happened to our lives? I had thoughts. As a young child, you want to grow up to become your parents or have dreams of becoming a certain profession. So at the time, I loved counting money for some reason, and I was really good at being organized, and I would fold in Indonesia, in the schooling system, you had to like wrap your books with paper.
Oh, yeah, we did that
Yeah.
here.
doing
We did
No,
that
we
here.
Oh, okay, you had it here
Yep,
too?
we
Oh,
did
okay.
that too.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, so I was like super good at doing that and making it and placing it nicely into my. So I was pretty organized, and I thought I was going to be in the business world, but I think God had some other plans for me.
Yeah. Yes. When you're a child, you want stability.
Yeah.
And when I don't know how old you were at 98, but I mean, it's pretty traumatizing because you uprooted from all your friends in the traumatic event of like
Yep.
chaos, and people want to hurt you, and then you have to move to another country you're not familiar with and start a new life.
Yeah.
And you were how old at the time?
I think I was about 11,
11.
10 or 11.
So you continued doing good grades here in the U.S.
That was ingrained in me, so I tried my best.
and you were going to do business.
Well, yeah, I
But then
was thinking of
but then
doing
it
business. It flipped. It did flip.
Oh, wait, I have one more question
sure.
before. I wanted to know, did you have, back in Indonesia, did you have a strong church family?
Yes.
Like, did a lot of your friends come from church?
Yeah. So pretty much most of my friends were from church. So
Oh, okay.
that was a great experience as far as we all went to church together. It was an international church. So we had an English side to an Indonesian side. And so we would always go on retreats, go up to the mountains together. We would hang out pretty much, quite often. And we grew pretty close.
Okay.
On Sabbath, of course, being kids running around, making airplanes and whatnot. But we were pretty close. So we had a
Yeah.
strong church family back in Indonesia.
So it wasn't maybe too much of a stretch that you came here to Loma Linda, where obviously there are a lot of Seventh-day Adventists gathered here.
Right.
It wasn't a new thing for you to have an environment and a community that was of the same religion and faith as you?
Right. Yeah, it wasn't a new thing where we definitely had that, Adventist community back in Indonesia. And over here, we had my uncle who was also Adventist with his family and the cousins at the time. So it definitely was not a hard transition. We went to church together, and that continued this spiritual focus. So that was good.
Do you think that there was a turning point in your life where you felt that God took on a different role for you? Or did you, because I don't imagine that you were still nominal now. Like you described yourself as being a nominal Adventist,
Sure.
living in just a normal everyday life.
Yeah.
How did that change?
Yes, so I think the first turning point was when I was in college. And at the time, I was hoping to become a medical doctor. So I was enrolled at Pacific Union College, and I was taking all the science classes. And just to backtrack a little bit, in high school, from the business mindset, something changed where I felt I was called to do more more medical ministry in high school. So that's the transition that I made as I applied to college, and I became pre-med at the time. So during college, again, I was being the best student by trying to get good grades, playing a lot of basketball, probably too much basketball, and then I would add some video games into that, a lot actually. But my junior year of college, something just didn't add up, or something didn't feel right. My grades were still pretty good, and maybe it was the pressures of medical school looming. I had to take the MCAT, or maybe it was God telling me, hey, this is not the right path for you. Whatever it was, I didn't really know at the time, but I felt there should have been a switch in my career. So I started asking around, and I talked to my friend Josh, and he was saying,
Maybe it was the
hey,
student loans.
maybe it was the student loans creeping up. I was like, I can't handle the student loans. Money, right? So I talked to my friends, and they said, hey, physical therapy might be a good option for you because you're active. I play a lot of basketball. I was always somewhat injured too. We can talk about my injuries later. But they said, try physical therapy. So I was like, what is that? I had never done physical therapy. I usually am the type of person that I would fix things myself. I never like to ask people for help. So they just said, go down to the local clinic and just observe. Just try it out. So, okay, I went down to St. Helena, the town down the hill from PUC, and I went to the local physical therapy clinic. I went in there. Of course, I asked them permission to come in and observe. So I think that was the first point where I saw myself in a career that I could definitely do for the rest of my life. What I saw was, it's just a person, of course, a therapist, and you had this patient in front of them. And it was cool seeing that they could spend time with them. They could really spend 30 minutes to an hour with them, talking to them, interacting, really listening to them, understanding what the problems they had were, and coaching and guiding them through exercise. And that was something that appealed to me. I didn't feel like my personality fit the more, medical route as far as medication, prescribing that, or other routes. But for me, exercise was important. And I felt like that was a calling for me. It's like, hey, you can use exercise to help people. And that was like, okay, I'm sold. I'm going to apply to Loma Linda Doctor of Physical Therapy program. The application deadline was really late already. I applied really, really late because I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. But
Well, you say really late, but I don't think people think different things when you say really late. How late were you?
well, I think back in 2007, I think the application deadline was around August or October. I can't remember. And I believe I applied in December.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's not late. That's
I think if I remember correctly, this has been a while now.
that's expired.
I think it expired.
That's like, oh, I don't have any chance of getting in. Were you thinking like?
I think either that or it was like really close to the deadline. It was like last minute thing
Yeah.
per my nature at the time. And lo and behold, I get this package. I had an interview with one of the professors, actually Howard from Evan Hope. Yep, Howard Solsley. And I got this package in February or March, I remember. and I was very nervous. Obviously, it was very late. I had applied late, and I didn't think I would get in because of that. So I opened it up, and I got in. And because of that moment, so to answer your question, that was the first realization that I felt like, God was actually guiding me along this journey that I really had no control over in a good way. I really wanted to help people at that time. And this was the first step that I saw that God was leading me somewhere. And I didn't know exactly where at the time to where I am here now. So that was the first step there. So I guess we could look at a verse here. We can look at the first Psalms 138, verse 7.
Psalm
138 and 7. So it says, "Though I walk in the midst of trouble, you will revive me. You will stretch out your hand against the wrath of my enemies, and your right hand will save me." So that verse speaks to me, of course, as far as the troubled times when I left Indonesia. It speaks to also the times when I was deciding what I wanted to do with my life, and God did revive me, and God did push me, I felt like, in the right direction. Yeah.
That's actually kind of a blessing too, to be able to see and realize God's leading you somewhere. Because a lot of times we look back and we're like, oh, God was leading me, or someone will point it out. But to actually notice that in the moment, you even have more of an opportunity to say, okay, God, take this and lead me where you want to go, like an active response to what He's doing.
Absolutely. And so after that moment, again, you're on this spiritual high, right? And then you get into physical therapy school, and then you just revert back to your, everyday grind. Again, get good grades, hang out with friends, play a lot of basketball, and some video games. But at the time, graduate school was much tougher, so I didn't have time for video games, so I took that out. So it was a lot of basketball. So that was friends, definitely. That was the main priority at the time. And so fast forward, went through physical therapy school, great experience, loved it, met some great people, continued to go to church, every Sabbath, enjoyed the social aspect of that, of course, and the information given. After I graduated, there was this burning desire to learn more. When you're in this profession and you want to help people, in my mind, why not be the best that you can be? And again, maybe that was, God pushing me to continue pursuits, or maybe it was just the typical Asian mentality of just getting better and just learning as much as you can. I think it was a God thing, because it pushed me to this experience where I went through a full year of growth. And what I mean by that, it was a year of self-reflection, it was a year of sacrifice, and it was a year of heartache. And there were days in this experience where I really questioned why I was a physical therapist. And it was also verbally asked to me, it's like, do you want to be a physical therapist? So, of course, you're like, wow, these are questions.
After you'd already finished.
Yes,
school.
I'm already an established, licensed physical therapist. So why would I go back and get tortured, right?
Right.
That's the question. But again, I wanted to learn more, and I felt, I was called to do this. So, long story short, so this experience taught me to really question. It's just the first thought of why. Growing up in an Asian household, I can say this just because I grew up in it. It's a more subservient household. You don't really question the things that are given to you in a positive way, right? So this year actually helped me question my thoughts as far as what I was actually doing in life, what I was doing in my profession, and that also translated a little bit to my spiritual walk too, because then, of course, being Adventist, you always revert back to the Bible when you're in troubled times. You try to claim some promises and really get motivation through prayer and hopefully improving your walk with God. So that time was a lot of anxiety. Some days I would have sleepless nights just being in fear the next morning of what might happen. And yeah, so that was a very troublesome time. But I got through it, and everything, I think, came out for the better because of that experience. I believe now I have a better understanding of what I'm supposed to be doing. It helped improve my ability to connect with people for my profession, but also help with connecting people in life.
Yeah.
So.
I kind of had a similar experience, and I'm glad you bring it up because a lot of times people think that, God's pointing you in this direction. He's laid out his path for you, and basically now your life's just going to take off and you're going to be great. And you'll do all the things that he wants you to do, and then you get into the position where you have everything that you think you need, and you're still not happy. You're still fearful. You wonder, like, why am I in this position? And it's just a reminder that there's always going to be difficulty, but God will get you through each part. You're never going to sit there and be like, I'm satisfied where I am, and there's nothing that can knock me off where I am.
Right.
It's just life. So.
Yep. Absolutely.
So after you went through that hardship tunnel,
Yeah. Well,
I think you were about to share with us a...
Sure, I can. So another verse comes to mind, of course, during that struggle, 2 Corinthians 4, 7 through 10. And it to me, this verse spoke to me as far as so it just says, but we have this treasure in the earthen vessels, that the excellence of the power may be of God and not of us. We are hard pressed on every side, yet not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. Always carrying about in the body the dying of the Lord Jesus, that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our body. So I felt like, we were getting pushed down, or I was getting pushed down, but something pushed me back up. It wasn't my personal desire because I wanted to quit. But something kept pushing me, and I believe that was God really pushing me through that year of personal, spiritual, and professional hardship. But that got me through to where I am today.
Yeah, a lot of trials seem to be useful for refining, or at least maybe not even refining at that moment, but they can be useful for pointing out maybe where you need refining.
Yes.
And so you're more aware of it.
Absolutely.
Then you're more likely to allow it to happen. And you can learn from your past and learn why you should grow and where you should grow. But in the midst of it, it doesn't really seem very nice.
No, and definitely I 100% agree with you. The awareness, the self-awareness is very huge. And just learning about your personality and how you can impact the world through your own struggles and experiences and showcase that to people, I think was a big learning point for me.
So when you finished your residency, now you were a more qualified or more advanced physical therapist.
Sure.
And so then you decided to start a business?
So, yes, it didn't happen right away. I had all this information. I actually took 2 more years of extra training because I'm a huge nerd. So I just love learning because I really wanted to help people. And so I continued on 2 more years, went to Los Angeles, lived out there. So that was a whole nother experience. But after learning all this information, I decided to create the business because I felt like I wanted to help a specific area of demographic of people. I felt like the injured person, let's say the whole population, there's a lot of physical therapy, a lot of clinics out that can help these people. But I felt like me being an active person, I felt like we were underserving that active person. So I decided to mash everything together and create this business where it's a physical therapy business, but it's focused on helping active people stay active. And that's kind of where my main focus is right now.
Yeah, like be better performing. They're higher performing and learning how to advance without being injured.
Absolutely. We want everyone who is active to continue to be active because a lot of people feel like pain can limit them. And because they are limited into the activity they want to do, then they become discouraged and it's a bad downward cycle. So we want to empower people to continue to move because there is a way, despite the pain, despite the limitations you have, there's always a way to maintain movement. And of course, it helps with the brain function, and it also helps with, I believe, the way you process information. And I think it's just good to have a balanced lifestyle.
How are you able to share God in that?
Absolutely. So I'm blessed to be able to make my own schedule. I have 45 minutes with one-on-one with this person, so I can say whatever I want to them. So one quick story, there was this patient, an elderly lady coming in. She was not really giving me information about what was going on, but she did give this one piece of information. She was saying, hey, I might want to just end it because I feel like this is too much for me. I can't take it. But long story short, I just prayed with her. I prayed for her every night. And I just continued to show her love, show her that you're going to get past this obstacle. And 2 weeks later, she started to come around, and you could see at that moment that God was working in her. And I felt like she was really starting to smile and get around. And so I can use that experience to pray with people. I can pray for them, and I can just show them love and show them care, because a lot of people nowadays don't get that connection. So I just want to share one more verse where what I'm working on now. So Philippians 2:3, verse 4. So it says, "Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others." So now, fast forward to everything that's happened in my life, and really wasn't quite sure what I was supposed to be doing. Now fast forward to seeing how God has led my family and myself to where we are now, coming from nothing to something. It wasn't me. It was a change of character. It was a refining moment of my character, hopefully closerly reflecting to how Jesus would want me to be. And the struggle now for me is going to be pride. Because of what I've done, I'm going to sometimes think about, I'm the best physical therapist. But no, it's not me. It's Christ. And so that verse reminds me to stay humble, to continue to exude humility, and to be able to really help people through their problems. And it's not about me, it's about them and about God, and showcasing God through me to them.
Well, thank you, Pete. Thank you for sharing your testimony. It's amazing to listen to where you were spiritually with the video games, and just this nominal Adventist coming along to now. Really, God seems to be a primary focus in your life. So
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
And we want to thank you also for watching. We hope that you will tune in next time. And also that you will be inspired by this, that you will also let your light shine, and that you will do it for God's glory. If you'd like to donate, please do so at LLBN.tv.